Good evening and welcome. I'm Richard for tonight's special report. What you are about to hear is not a projection. It is not a forecast. It is not a warning about what might happen. What you are about to hear is what is happening right now, tonight, across the breadth of the Middle East in the energy arteries that keep the modern world alive. The title of tonight's report is simple, direct, and devastating. Iran's energy war. Iraq's oil port has been shut down. Bahrain has been struck. Qatar has declared force majeure on its gas exports. Oman's port of Salalah is burning. And oil prices have crossed $100 a barrel for the first time in years. The world's fuel supply, the invisible infrastructure upon which every economy, every hospital, every supply chain depends, is under systematic, deliberate, and escalating attack. Let us begin at the epicenter, Iraq, the southern port of Qasr. In Bosra province, in the early hours of Thursday morning, March 12, 2026, day 13 of the United States-Israel war against Iran, 2 crude oil tankers were attacked by Iranian explosive-laden boats while conducting a routine ship-to-ship transfer operation in Iraqi territorial waters. The vessels had loaded their cargo at Qasr, one of Iraq's most critical oil export terminals, a port that moves millions of barrels of crude into the international market. Every single month, the 2 ships targeted were the Safasiya Vishnu, a tanker flying the flag of the Marshall Islands and owned, according to senior Iraqi officials, by an American company, and the Zephyros, a Malta-flagged vessel. Both tankers were engulfed in fire. Rescue teams scrambled to the scene. 1 body was recovered from the burning waters. 38 crew members were pulled to safety. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps openly claimed responsibility for the attack on the Safasiya Vishnu, stating in an official that the vessel had, in their words, disobeyed and ignored warnings issued by the URG. Iraq's response was immediate and total. Farhan al-Fartusi, the head of Iraq's General Company for Ports, announced to the Iraqi news agency that all oil terminal operations across the country had been completely and indefinitely suspended, every oil terminal, every export berth, shut. Lieutenant General Sodman, head of Iraq's security media cell, described the attack in a statement as, and I quote, a cowardly act of sabotage. Think about what that means for a moment. Iraq is the second largest oil producer in OPEC. It exports approximately 3.3 million barrels of crude oil every single day. 97% of those exports flow through one single route, the Strait of Hormuz, and tonight that route is closed. The storage tanks are full, the ships cannot leave, and now the port itself is shut down. Iraq's oil production, which had already been collapsing under the weight of Hormuz disruptions, is heading toward a near-complete halt. Bloomberg has reported that approximately 1.2 million barrels per day have already gone offline. Tonight that number is climbing higher. But Iraq was not the only country struck in the early hours of this morning, not by a long distance. Let us move southeast to Bahrain, a small island nation, a close American ally and home to the United States Navy's 5th Fleet. Bahrain has been a consistent and repeated target throughout this war, but Thursday's attack was among the most alarming yet. Iranian drones struck a fuel tank storage facility at a government installation. In Bahrain's Maharak Governorate, the tanks caught fire. The Bahraini government, in an announcement that should send a chill through every listener, instructed its citizens to stay indoors, close their windows, and shelter in place. Shelter in place. In a country of 1.5 million people, because of a fuel storage fire caused by a drone strike. This is the reality of the energy war in 2026. Earlier this week, an Iranian missile struck Bahrain's only operational oil refinery. The damage from that strike has not been fully assessed, but tonight, with the fuel storage facility burning, Bahrain's energy infrastructure is under acute and sustained pressure. Now let us move to Oman, the port of Salalah, one of the most strategically important commercial ports in the entire Arabian Sea. Handling container ships from Asia to Europe and beyond was struck by an Iranian drone. A fire broke out at the port facility. Operations were disrupted. Oman, which has historically maintained a delicate, careful neutrality between Iran and the Western powers, has now been drawn directly into the physical theater of this energy war. The Oman news agency confirmed that the country's Maritime Security Center had also registered the attack on a Thai-flagged commercial vessel, the Mayurina Re, in waters off the Omani coast in recent days. Oman is being hit from multiple directions simultaneously, and then there is Qatar, the world's single largest exporter of liquefied natural gas LNG, the fuel that heats homes across Europe and powers industry across Asia. Qatar's state energy company, Qatarnergy, has declared force majeure on its LNG export contracts. Force majeure, the legal term for an act of God, an event so catastrophic and beyond human control that contractual obligations cannot be fulfilled. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's entire LNG. 20% gone offline. following Iranian drone strikes on Qatar's energy infrastructure. Industry sources told Reuters it could take at minimum 1 month before Qatari LNG exports return to anything approaching normal levels. And then there is Saudi Arabia, the world's top oil exporter, the beating heart of global petroleum supply. Saudi Aramco's Ras Al Noura facility, the single largest crude oil export terminal on Earth, has been closed following attacks. An Iranian drone targeted the Shaiba oil field deep in the empty Qatar desert earlier this week. Saudi air defenses intercepted it. But another round of drones was tracked heading toward the Shaiba field and toward the embassy's district in Riyadh on Wednesday. 7 drones intercepted in a single day, 7 around Saudi Arabia's most critical and irreplaceable energy asset, and S&P Global Ratings has confirmed that 89% of all Saudi energy exports flow through the Strait of Hormuz, 89%, which is at this moment effectively closed. Kuwait. 2 people were wounded when a hostile drone struck a residential building. 6 high-voltage power transmission lines went offline after debris from intercepted drones fell across them. Kuwait's international airport was targeted. Kuwait, which had already begun cutting oil production due to full storage tanks and blocked export routes, is now also under direct physical attack. The United Arab Emirates. Explosions heard in downtown Dubai. Air defense systems activated across the emirate. A container ship struck approximately 35 nautical miles north of Jebel Ali, one of the busiest commercial ports in the world. A fire broke out at Abu Dhabi's Old International Airport before being brought under control. No casualties reported in Abu Dhabi, but the message delivered by these attacks is unmistakable. No Gulf state is beyond reach. Jordan. Air raid sirens rang out across every city in the kingdom on Wednesday. Jordan, a country with virtually no oil of its own, dependent on Gulf imports for its energy needs, is now living under the sound of war. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow blue passage between Iran and Oman, roughly 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, through which flows approximately 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply and 1/3 of all globally traded LNG. That strait is, for all practical purposes, closed. Iran Zerg has declared every vessel belonging to the United States, Israel, or any nation it considers their ally to be a, quote, legitimate military target. Iranian naval forces have laid mines in the waterway. 3 commercial ships were struck by projectiles on Wednesday. The US military destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels in response, but the damage, psychological and physical, is done. Tanker operators are refusing to enter. Insurance premiums for vessels attempting to transit the strait have gone to near prohibitive levels. Traffic has collapsed. Reuters has confirmed that the near-complete shutdown of the strait has forced Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iraq and Kuwait to suspend shipments of as much as 140 million barrels of oil, equivalent to approximately 1.4 full days of global demand to refiners worldwide. Oil and gas storage tanks across the Gulf are rapidly filling to capacity. When storage is full, production must stop. And stop production does not simply restart when the guns go quiet. Petroleum engineers are warning the world that oil and gas wells are not light switches. Forcing a well to shut in can trigger geological damage, water rushing in to fill the pore spaces where oil once sat, locking oil underground, permanently, forever, beyond recovery. This oil is not just paused, said Sid Misra, petroleum engineering professor at Texas A&M University. It is physically locked away from ever being produced through the wellbore. Even when the conflict ends, that production capacity may be gone forever. The global markets have heard those words. Brent crude oil was hovering at $100 per barrel as of early Thursday morning, up 38% since before the war began on February 28. JP Morgan analysts have warned that the market has moved beyond pricing in geopolitical risk and is now confronting, in their words, tangible operational disruption. The US national average for a gallon of gasoline has risen 34 cents in a single week. Diesel is at $4.33 a gallon. In Japan, baseload electricity futures jumped more than a third in a single week. In South Korea, drivers are queuing at petrol stations. In Europe, which spent 3 years recovering from the Russian gas crisis, the prospect of losing Qatari LNG on top of everything else is being described by analysts as nothing short of catastrophic. China has asked its refineries to suspend fuel exports. Thailand has suspended fuel exports. India's state-run refineries are declaring force majeure on gasoline sales. At least 2 Chinese refineries have cut their processing runs. The ripple effects of what is happening in the Persian Gulf tonight are being felt in every economy on Earth. Washington's response has been a commitment to naval escorts for oil tankers and government-backed insurance through the Development Finance Corporation. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet is active. U.S. Central Command has struck over 5,500 targets inside Iran, but Iran has proven night after night that its capacity to strike back At tankers, at ports, at oil fields, at airports, at residential buildings has not been neutralized. Not yet. The war that began on February 28th as a military campaign against Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure has become something far larger, far more complex, and far more dangerous to the daily lives of ordinary people across the globe. It has become an energy war. A war fought not only with bombs and missiles and drones, but with economics, with oil, with gas, with the power to turn off the lights. 2,000 dead. Nearly a fifth of global oil supply disrupted. Iraq's ports shut. Bahrain burning. Qatar's gas offline. Oman's port in flames. $100 barrel of crude and no end date confirmed. This is day 13. We will be back with you tomorrow. For the entire team at this network, stay informed, stay safe. And remember, the price of this war is being paid at every petrol station, every electricity meter, and every kitchen table around the world tonight. This has been your special energy war report. The world is watching and the world is running out of fuel.